The Galactic Confederation stood as the crowning achievement of interstellar civilization. For centuries, they had united thousands of advanced species across the stars, creating a harmony of technology and culture that seemed unbreakable. The Grand Council chambers on Station Prime, their central hub, featured architecture that defied Earth physics, crystalline spires that captured starlight and redirected it through impossible angles, creating a cathedral of light. Supreme Coordinator Teo paced the central platform, his silver skin reflecting the holographic displays that surrounded him. Unlike many council members, he retained a humanoid form, though his proportions were elongated and his eyes, 3 of them, glowed with an inner bioluminescence that indicated his mood. Today, that glow pulsed an alarming red. "The situation has deteriorated beyond our projections," Taiho announced, his voice carrying the mathematical precision characteristic of his species. "The anomaly designated as the Void has now consumed 3 additional systems in the outer rim. Tycho, Mopne, and Exiris Prime, all gone." The assembled representatives murmured in their various biological and synthetic languages. The translation field converted their concern into a symphony of worried tones that filled the chamber. Science Director Ju approached the central platform. Her crystalline exoskeleton caught the light, fracturing it into rainbow patterns across the floor. Unlike Tahoe, her species had evolved in the high-pressure depths of methane oceans, resulting in a form more reminiscent of an elaborate mineral formation than flesh. When she moved, it was with the precision of a living gemstone. "Our most advanced analytical models have failed," she stated flatly. "We have applied 17 different theoretical frameworks to the Void's movement patterns. None provide predictive accuracy above 23%. It defies our understanding of physical laws." Display screens throughout the chamber showed the progression of the Void, a darkness that expanded not just by destroying matter, but by seeming to erase the very fabric of space-time itself. Wherever it passed, nothing remained, not debris, not radiation, not even the expected gravitational echoes. For the first time, in 10,000 cycles, the Confederation faced something they could not classify, predict, or control. The silence that fell over the chamber carried the weight of collective fear, an emotion many species present had engineered out of their genetic makeup generations ago, yet now returned like a primitive instinct. Historian Do Yun, a being composed of living gas contained within an environmental suit, floated forward. His voice emerged as a whisper that seemed reluctant to disturb the silence. "There may be an alternative approach," he said. All attention shifted to him. Do Hyun rarely spoke at council meetings, preferring to observe and document. For him to offer input signaled the gravity of the situation. "My archaeological division recently completed translating texts from the progenitor archives found in the Centauri ruins," he continued. "They mention a species with cognitive patterns unlike any in the Confederation, humans from the planet Earth." Defense Minister Yuna, a towering being with segmented armor plates instead of skin, made a sound that translated universally as scorn. "Humans, that primitive world. They have barely mastered rudimentary space travel within their own solar system. They still rely on biological reproduction and experience emotional states that cloud judgment." Do-Hyun remained unperturbed by the dismissal. "Yet they think differently," he insisted. "Their neural architecture evolved along paths distinct from any species in the Confederation. Where we see patterns, they see possibilities. Where we apply logic, they apply intuition. Where we seek consensus, they embrace contradiction." He activated a display showing human brain scans alongside Confederation species comparisons. "The text suggests this dual thinking capability might be precisely what we need when facing something beyond our collective understanding." Chief Administrator Minjin, whose species communicated through color patterns across their translucent skin, flashed skepticism in purple spirals. "Are you suggesting we rely on primitive instinct when our most advanced computational systems have failed?" "I am suggesting," Do-Hyun replied carefully, "that after exhausting all conventional approaches, we should consider unconventional ones. The progenitors themselves noted that humans possess a unique capacity for creative problem-solving in chaotic systems like the void. The council erupted into debate. Some representatives found the suggestion offensive, that primitives might succeed where their advanced civilizations had failed. Others recalled obscure incidents throughout Confederate history, where unsolvable problems had yielded to unexpected solutions. Tahoe raised his hand, instantly silencing the chamber. We have followed every protocol, applied every known scientific principle, and deployed our most advanced technologies against the void. Yet it continues to expand. If we maintain our current approach, predictive models give us less than 300 cycles before core systems begin to fall. He turned to Doyun. These texts, do they suggest specific humans, or merely the species in general? The texts indicate that what they term lateral thinking is common throughout their species, though it manifests with greater intensity in certain individuals, particularly those they label as creative problem solvers, often found in their scientific communities. Science Director Juwu's crystalline form vibrated with skepticism. How would such a being integrate with our research teams? Their communication would be primitive, their understanding of our technology negligible. Perhaps that is precisely what we need, Dohyun countered. Someone unburdened by our assumptions. Tahoe considered the options silently while the council waited. Finally, he addressed the gathered representatives. We face extinction if we continue our current path. While the suggestion is unprecedented, so is our situation. He straightened to his full height, making his decision. We will establish contact with Earth and identify a suitable human representative to assist our efforts. Defense Minister Yuma stepped forward in protest. Supreme Coordinator, this violates our non-interference protocols for developing worlds. Humans are not ready for Confederation contact. The protocols exist to protect developing species, Tahoe replied calmly. If the void continues its expansion, there will be no humans to protect. This is not just about our survival, but theirs as well. The decision, while controversial, was made. A special contact team would be assembled immediately, with orders to identify and recruit a human with the specific cognitive abilities that might help them understand the void. The selection would need to be precise, someone who could bridge the vast technological and cultural divide, yet bring the unique human perspective they desperately needed. As the council adjourned, many representatives wondered silently what kind of human could possibly help them face a threat that had conquered the collective intelligence of 1,000 worlds. But even the greatest skeptics understood the ancient wisdom. When faced with extinction, any possibility, however remote, was worth pursuing. Dr. Sunwoo Park rubbed her tired eyes and glanced at the clock on her office wall. It was nearly midnight, and she was still hunched over stacks of data from her latest chaos theory experiments. The university halls were empty, the only sounds coming from the hum of her computer and the occasional drip of her forgotten tea. As director of theoretical physics at Seoul National University, Sunwoo had earned a reputation for unorthodox approaches to complex problems. Her colleagues often joked that her mind worked in dimensions they couldn't access. Tonight, she was puzzling over anomalous patterns in quantum fluctuations that defied conventional mathematical models. A soft hum filled the room, so subtle she almost missed it. The air in the center of her cluttered desk began to shimmer, as if heat was rising from an invisible source. Sunwoo pushed back in her chair, knocking over a stack of journals. A small silver sphere, roughly the size of a baseball, materialized in midair. It hovered silently for a moment before emitting a soft blue light that expanded into a three-dimensional projection. Sunwoo stared in disbelief as the image solidified into forms that were clearly not human. The tallest figure stood nearly 7 feet tall with metallic silver skin and 3 luminescent eyes arranged in a triangle. Beside it stood a crystalline being that seemed to be made of living gemstone, and a third entity contained in what looked like an environmental suit. "Dr. Park," said the tall silver being in perfect Korean, though its mouth didn't move in sync with the words. I am Coordinator Tahoe of the Galactic Confederation. Your species stands at a crossroads. We require your assistance. Sun Wu laughed nervously, looking around for hidden cameras. Is this some kind of prank? Did Hyunki from astrophysics put you up to this? The hologram technology is impressive. I'll give you that. The silver being. Tahoe tilted his head slightly. This is not a deception, Dr. Park. We have been monitoring your species for some time. The situation necessitates direct contact. Right, Sun Wu said, reaching forward to wave her hand through the projection. To her shock, the image remained solid and unperturbed. That's not possible. In response, the silver sphere expanded, growing to the size of a beach ball. The air within it seemed to fold inward, creating what appeared to be a window into space. Sun Wu found herself looking at Earth from orbit, its blue-green surface partially illuminated by the sun. The view zoomed out rapidly, stars blurring past until a vast map of spiral arms appeared, clearly the Milky Way galaxy. On the far edge of one spiral arm, a darkness spread like spilled ink across multiple star systems. Unlike the blackness of space, this darkness seemed to consume the very light around it, leaving nothing behind. This is the void, explained Tayo, his voice grave. It has consumed 17 star systems in the past cycle. It consumes everything in its path. Planets, stars, space itself. Our science cannot predict or stop it. We need human thinking. Sun Wu stood up slowly, circling her desk to get a better view of the galactic map. Her scientific mind was already racing, analyzing the pattern of the spreading darkness. Assuming this is real, why come to Earth? And why me specifically? There must be thousands of civilizations more advanced than ours. The crystalline being stepped forward, its voice sounding like wind chimes. I am Science Director Juwu. We have monitored 3,247 sentient civilizations with spacefaring capability. None think like humans. Your neural architecture evolved differently. You make cognitive leaps our species cannot replicate. Tahoe nodded. Our civilizations evolved toward perfect logic, consistency, predictability. The void follows none of these principles. It is chaos incarnate. Why me? Sun Wu asked again, her skepticism gradually yielding to wonder as she studied the impossible technology before her. Your research on pattern recognition in chaotic systems, Tahoe replied. Your hobby of creating impossible puzzles for international competitions. Your reputation for solutions that others consider illogical. You see connections where others see only randomness. Sun Wu thought of her colleagues' reactions whenever she proposed her more outlandish theories. Just last month, the university board had threatened to cut her funding after her paper on intuitive approaches to quantum paradoxes was rejected by 3 prestigious journals. If this is real, she said carefully, what exactly would you want from me? Join our research team on Station Prime, said Juwu. Help us understand the void before it consumes populated worlds. We can return you to this exact moment in time when our work is complete. Sun Wu laughed, though there was no humor in it. You're asking me to just leave Earth, based on a projection in my office at midnight. We understand your hesitation, Tahoe said. We will provide proof and time to prepare. Over the next 3 days, Sun Wu received more visits from the alien delegation. They answered her questions, demonstrated technology that defied Earth's physics, and eventually took her on a brief trip to lunar orbit and back in less than 5 minutes, a journey that left her gasping in wonder and finally convinced her of their sincerity. Preparing for her departure proved challenging. She told her department she needed emergency medical leave. She told her parents she was joining a research expedition in Antarctica. Only her younger sister received something closer to the truth, that she was going somewhere far away, on a mission of tremendous importance, and didn't know when she would return. On the final evening, Sun Wu stood in her apartment, looking at the photos on her wall. Her graduation, hiking trips with friends, her parents' anniversary celebration last year. The weight of what she was about to do pressed down on her. She would be the first human to leave the solar system, to represent her entire species to a galactic community. "Am I really the right person for this?" she whispered to the empty room. The silver sphere, which had remained on her coffee table, pulsed gently. "Your doubt is precisely why you were chosen," came Tahoe's voice. "Your species calls it imposter syndrome. Our species never questioned their qualifications. This may be why we failed to solve this crisis." 3 hours later, on a deserted mountainside outside Seoul, Sunwoo watched as a ship materialized from thin air. Unlike the sleek spaceships of science fiction, it resembled a geometric puzzle, interconnected spheres and cylinders that seemed to fold into dimensions she couldn't quite perceive. As she stepped aboard, carrying only a small bag of personal items, Sunwoo felt a strange calm replace her earlier anxiety. The interior of the vessel was bathed in soft blue light, with control surfaces that responded to thought rather than touch. "How long will the journey take?" she asked as the door sealed behind her. "In your perception, approximately 16 hours, Ju explained. "Station Prime exists at a focal point of what you might call folded space." As the ship rose silently into the night sky, Sunwoo watched her home planet shrink beneath her. Earth, beautiful, troubled, diverse Earth, unaware that its fate was now tied to the success of her mission. She was humanity's first and only representative in a galactic crisis, a reluctant ambassador for a species that didn't even know it needed one. The laboratory assigned to Sunwoo on Station Prime was unlike anything she had imagined. The walls seemed to shift with her thoughts, displaying data in 3 dimensions. Advanced AI systems could run simulations in seconds that would take Earth's supercomputers months to process. Equipment that defied her understanding of physics stood ready to assist her research. Yet after 2 weeks, Sunwoo found herself kneeling on the floor, surrounded by papers she had insisted on printing out. Science Director Ju stood in the doorway, her crystalline body reflecting prismatic light patterns across the room. The alien scientist's face had no human expressions, but her posture conveyed clear disapproval. "This is inefficient," Ju stated, watching Sunwoo arrange physical notes across the laboratory floor. "Our neural interfaces could organize this data instantly." "Maybe," Sunwoo replied without looking up, "but I think better this way." Sunwoo had discovered that the Confederation scientists, for all their advanced technology, had blind spots in their thinking. Their minds worked like quantum computers, precise, logical, and utterly devoid of the creative leaps that characterized human thought. During meetings, they found her methods chaotic and her questions irrelevant. "Why does the void consume some systems but pass others?" she had asked repeatedly during briefings. "There is no discernible pattern," was always the answer. "Our algorithms have analyzed all variables." But Sunwoo wasn't convinced. The Confederation's faith in their algorithms was absolute, a faith she didn't share. She had requested printouts of all data collected on the Void's movements over the past 5 years, mapping them out by hand. "Dr. Park, may I remind you that time is critical," Ju said. "The Void has accelerated its consumption rate by 12% in the past week alone." Sunwoo nodded absently, moving a star chart to align with another. Something was forming in her mind, a connection she couldn't quite grasp. She had spent days arranging and rearranging the data, looking for patterns the Confederation's computers had missed. Junior researchers Minho and Ja entered the laboratory. Unlike the senior scientists, these younger aliens had shown curiosity about Sunwoo's methods. Minho, whose species resembled a humanoid with silver-blue skin and 6-fingered hands, had actually tried sitting on the floor with her yesterday. Jia, a being of living light contained within an environmental field, hovered nearby. "Have you made progress, Dr. Park?" Minho asked, his translator converting his musical language into Korean for her benefit. Sunwoo sat back on her heels, looking at the arrangement before her. The star charts, the consumption rates, the movement patterns, something was there, just at the edge of recognition. "Almost," she whispered. She closed her eyes, letting her unconscious mind work. This was how she had solved her most challenging problems on Earth, not through direct analysis, but by allowing her brain to form connections below the threshold of conscious thought. When she opened her eyes, she saw it. "It's not random," she whispered. Then louder, "It's not random. The void isn't just consuming, it's searching." Jiwoo's crystalline features remained impassive. "Explain." Sunwoo jumped to her feet, pointing excitedly at the patterns she'd created on the floor. "Look at the systems the void has consumed versus those it's passed by. There's a pattern, not in space, but in composition." She moved quickly between the charts. The void preferentially targets systems with specific ratios of elements, particularly those rich in neutronium and dark matter configurations. Minho knelt to examine her arrangement. "Our analysis detected no such correlation, because you were looking at each factor in isolation," Sunwoo explained. "It's the relationship between factors that matters. These movements, they follow fractal patterns, like water seeking the path of least resistance. But what if the void is seeking something specific? What if we tried communicating with it using its own patterns?" Defense Minister Yuna appeared in the doorway, her armored exoskeleton making the floor vibrate with each step. "Communicate? With a cosmic destruction event?" She scoffed. "Absolutely not. We prepare for military engagement." Yuna had made her position clear from the beginning. The void was a threat to be destroyed, not understood. The latest weapon systems were being deployed to the edge of Confederation space, ready to attack the void when it next appeared. "Minister Yuna," Sunwoo began, "if the void is sentient..." Speculation without evidence, Yuna interrupted. "Our sensors detect no organized structure within the void that could support intelligence. It is a natural phenomenon, like your Earth's hurricanes, destructive but mindless." "Even Earth's hurricanes follow patterns," Sunwoo countered. "And intelligence doesn't always look like we expect it to." Yuna's translator rendered her response as an irritated grunt. "The Defense Council has approved my strategy. Preparations continue." She turned and left, her heavy footsteps echoing down the corridor. Jiwoo tilted her crystalline head. "Dr. Park, while your theory is interesting, Minister Yuna is correct about our sensor readings. We have found no evidence of organized structure within the void." "What if you're looking for the wrong kind of structure?" Sunwoo pressed. "On Earth, we once thought jellyfish weren't intelligent because they don't have brains like ours. But they process information through a neural net throughout their entire body." Jiwoo seemed to consider this. "I must report your findings to the Science Council. Continue your work." She glided from the room, leaving Sunwoo with the two junior researchers. Once they were alone, Minho approached Sunwoo. "Dr. Park, Ja, and I have been discussing your theories privately. We find them compelling." Jaya's form brightened in what Sunwoo had learned was agreement. "The Council is bound by consensus thinking. They cannot approve untested theories." Sunwoo looked between them. "What are you suggesting?" "That perhaps we should gather evidence before presenting your theory formally," Minho said carefully. "The research vessel Lumina is equipped with long-range probes. Jaya and I have access. You'd risk your positions to help me test my theory?" Sunwoo asked, surprised. "We joined the science division to discover new knowledge." Ja's light pulsed. "The Confederation's methods have failed thus far. Yours offer an alternative." Sunwoo smiled for the first time in days. "We'll need to modify a long-range probe," she told them quietly, "and keep this between us for now." Over the next 3 days, the unlikely trio worked in secret. Using Sunwoo's theories, they reprogrammed a probe to emit energy patterns that mimicked the void's own fractal movements. If the void was indeed searching for something, perhaps it would respond to a signal that matched its behavior. "The probe is ready," Minho announced late on the third night. "We've routed the launch controls through secondary systems to avoid detection. And I've created a buffer in the sensor logs." Jia added, "We'll have approximately 6 hours before the missing probe is noticed." Sunwoo looked at the small probe, their only hope of proving her theory before Yunha's military solution was implemented. If she was wrong, they would lose valuable time and likely their positions. If she was right, they might save countless lives. "Launch it," she said, making her decision. "Let's see if the Void wants to talk." The emergency alarms on Station Prime wailed with an intensity that made Sunwoo cover her ears. Red warning lights pulsed through every corridor as she rushed toward the central council chamber, Minho and Jaya hurrying alongside her. They had been summoned without explanation, but Sunwoo knew why. Their secret probe had been discovered. The massive doors to the council chamber slid open to reveal the full Galactic Confederation leadership assembled in emergency session. Faces from 100 different species turned toward them, expressions ranging from fear to anger. Supreme Coordinator Tahoe stood at the center of the raised platform, his silver skin now dark with emotion. His three eyes fixed on Sunwoo with an intensity that made her stop in her tracks. "You have endangered the entire Confederation." Tahoe's voice echoed through the council chamber, launching an unauthorized probe into the void. The words hit Sunwoo like a physical blow. Behind Tahoe, the main display showed a galactic map with real-time tracking. The void, which had been steadily progressing through the outer systems, had suddenly changed course. It was now moving directly toward Station Prime at unprecedented speed. Sunwoo stepped forward, aware of the weight of every eye upon her. "I take full responsibility," she said, her voice sounding small in the vast chamber. "But something happened when our probe entered the void," it responded. The chamber erupted in panic. Representatives shouted in dozens of languages, their translation fields creating a cacophony of overlapping voices. Some rose from their seats, gesturing wildly. Others seemed to shrink into themselves with fear. Then Jaya moved forward, her form glowing brighter than usual. The light being raised what passed for an arm, and somehow her quiet voice cut through the chaos. "The data confirms it," Jaya said. "The void altered its pattern after receiving our transmission. It absorbed our probe, processed the information, and changed direction precisely 3.7 minutes later." Defense Minister Yuma stomped forward, her armored exoskeleton clanking with each furious step. "You've provoked it," she shouted, pointing an accusing appendage at Sunwoo. "Now it targets our core worlds. This human has doomed us all." "No," Sunwoo insisted, stepping forward to face Yuna directly. Though the defense minister towered over her, Sunwoo refused to back down. "It's curious. The probe sent mathematical sequences based on the void's own patterns. It's coming closer to communicate, not attack." Science Director Jiwoo joined them on the platform. "This is speculation, Dr. Park. The evidence suggests the void has identified Station Prime as a threat and is now targeting it directly." "Then why has it slowed down?" Minho asked, activating his personal data screen to project the void's velocity measurements. "Its speed has decreased by 42% in the past hour. If it meant to attack, wouldn't it accelerate?" Tahoe studied the data, his three eyes blinking in sequence. A sign Sunwoo had learned indicated deep thought among his species. "This is unexpected," he admitted. "Give us a chance to prove our theory," Sunwoo pleaded, "before you launch a military response that might provoke actual hostility." The council chamber fell silent as Tahoe considered. Finally, he nodded. "You have until the void reaches the outer sensor perimeter. Then Minister Yunho will deploy the defense fleet as planned. That gives us less than 6 hours," Minho whispered as they hurried toward the observatory. The observatory of Station Prime occupied the highest level of the station, a massive transparent dome that offered an unobstructed view of surrounding space. Normally used for astronomical research, it had been converted into an emergency monitoring station for the void. Sunwoo and her team worked frantically, recalibrating the station's powerful receivers to detect any signal that might be embedded in the void's movements. Ja's ability to perceive light wavelengths beyond any instrument proved invaluable as they searched for patterns. "Nothing," Minho said after the 4th hour, frustration evident in his voice. We've tried every frequency, every mathematical sequence. Sun Wu stared out at the stars, fighting exhaustion and doubt. What if she was wrong? What if the void was exactly what everyone believed, a mindless force of destruction? She had staked not just her reputation, but potentially the lives of everyone on Station Prime on her theory. Wait, Jaya suddenly pulsed brighter. The void has reached the outer perimeter, but it's stopping. The observatory screens confirmed it. The void had halted its advance, hovering at the edge of the Confederation's defense perimeter. It wasn't consuming anymore, just waiting. It's expecting a response, Sun Wu whispered. Like a conversation. Defense Minister Yuna entered the observatory, flanked by military aides. Time's up, human. The defense fleet launches in 15 minutes. Minister, please. Sun Wu pointed to the screens. It stopped. If it meant to attack, it would already be consuming the outer defense stations. Yuna hesitated, studying the readings. This could be a tactical pause. Perhaps it's assessing our defenses, or waiting for us to speak, Sun Wu countered. Let me send one more signal. If I'm wrong, your fleet can still deploy. After a tense moment, Yuna nodded curtly. One attempt. Make it quick. Sun Wu turned to Minho and Jia. Let's simplify. The first probe was too complex. Let's try the most basic mathematical constants, universal principles any intelligent entity would recognize. They quickly programmed a signal containing simple constants, pi, the golden ratio, prime numbers, arranged in the same fractal pattern they had observed in the void's movements. With a deep breath, Sun Wu activated the transmission. For several minutes, nothing happened. The void remained motionless at the perimeter. Yuna checked her timepiece pointedly. Then, impossibly, a response came. The edges of the void began to pulse in a distinct pattern, and the observatory's instruments detected mathematical sequences flowing back, not in any conventional transmission format, but encoded in the very fluctuations of the void itself. It's alive, breathed Sun Wu, staring at the data streaming across the screens. And it's been alone for so long, it didn't realize the stars it consumed contained life. The patterns continued, becoming more complex. Sun Wu and her team worked to decode them, finding that the void was sending mathematical concepts back to them, building toward more sophisticated communication. It's learning our language, Minho said in awe, or creating a shared one. One pattern repeated frequently, and Jia was the first to recognize it. This sequence, it's asking a question. The same one, over and over. Sun Wu studied the pattern, then gasped in realization. It's asking if the stars it consumed had life. It doesn't understand the concept of planets or biological organisms. It's been feeding on stellar energy, not realizing that it was destroying inhabited worlds in the process. As they watched, the void continued its communication, the patterns growing increasingly complex. Through the transparent dome, they could see its edges shifting, forming what almost looked like reaching tendrils, not threatening, but exploratory. We need to respond, Sun Wu said, turning to Yuna. Not with weapons, but with information. It doesn't understand what it's done. This could be the first contact with an entirely new form of intelligence. Yuna looked between Sun Wu and the void hovering at the edge of Confederation space. For the first time, uncertainty showed in her posture. How can we trust something that has destroyed entire worlds? The same way your people trusted me, Sun Wu replied quietly. I taking a chance on understanding something different. 3 months after the first contact with the void, the observation deck of Station Prime looked nothing like its original design. The once pristine space had been transformed into what some Confederation species called organized chaos. Holographic displays filled the air with swirling mathematical equations. Strange devices built to Sun Wu's specifications hummed in corners. And at the center of it all floated what could only be described as a small piece of the void, a shimmering darkness contained in a specialized containment field. Sun Wu stood before this darkness, moving her hands through holographic symbols that changed and evolved as she worked. She looked thinner than when she had first arrived on Station Prime, with dark circles under her eyes and her hair hastily tied back. But there was an energy to her movements that spoke of excitement rather than exhaustion. "Incredible," whispered Council Member Mincio to Supreme Coordinator Teo as they watched from the entrance. "The human has been communicating with it for days without stopping." 73 hours and 19 minutes, Tahoe confirmed. "She has taken only brief breaks for sustenance and rest." The entire Confederation Council had gathered to witness the culmination of Sun Wu's work. Even Defense Minister Yuna stood among them, her armor now bearing the marks of battle from the brief, misguided military engagement that had occurred before communication protocols were established. Sun Wu finally noticed their presence and stepped away from the containment field. The peace of the void seemed to pulse slightly, as if acknowledging her departure. She approached the council, running a hand through her disheveled hair. "We've reached an understanding," she said without preamble. "The entity we call the Void is ancient, billions of years old. It evolved in the spaces between stars, feeding on stellar energy. It had no concept that planets harbored sentient life until our probe made contact. It's apologetic in its way." Apologetic. Yunha remained skeptical, her translator rendering her tone as defensive. "It destroyed thousands of worlds. Because it didn't know they were there," Sun Wu explained patiently. "Its perception doesn't work like ours. It experiences reality primarily through energy patterns and gravitational waves. Solid matter is almost invisible to it, like air is to us. Our planets, our cities, our people, all were just background noise it filtered out while feeding on stars." Chu-Wu moved forward, her crystalline form reflecting the darkness of the void fragment. "How did you establish communication with such an alien consciousness?" "Mathematics first," Sun Wu explained. "Then metaphors using energy patterns. It thinks very differently from us. But it's intelligent, perhaps more so than any of us. It's been exploring the universe for billions of years, collecting knowledge, and now it offers a solution." Sun Wu continued. "It can divert its path to uninhabited systems. In exchange, it asks for our star maps to help navigate. It's lonely curious, not malevolent." Tahoe stepped closer to the containment field, studying the fragment of darkness. "You're certain it can be trusted? This could be a strategy to access our core worlds." "It could have consumed Station Prime the moment it arrived," Sun Wu pointed out. "Instead, it spent months learning to communicate with us. It sent this fragment of itself as a gesture of trust." The piece of void pulsed gently, as if affirming her words. Around it, holographic symbols shifted into new patterns, an ongoing conversation. Over the weeks that followed, a formal treaty was established between the Galactic Confederation and the entity now officially designated as the Cosmic Awareness, though Sun Wu privately continued to call it the Void. The agreement was unlike any in Confederation history, not written on paper or stored in computers, but encoded in mathematical harmonics that resonated with both the Void's consciousness and Confederation technology. The Void would adjust its feeding patterns to avoid inhabited worlds, and in exchange, the Confederation would share detailed maps of uninhabited systems, rich in the specific stellar energies it preferred. More importantly, they established regular communication protocols, ending the Void's eons of solitary existence. As the treaty was finalized, an unprecedented announcement came from the Confederation Council. Earth was formally invited to join the Galactic Confederation, centuries ahead of when it would have qualified under normal protocols. The invitation came with a specific role. Humanity would serve as intermediaries for encounters with non-standard intelligence forms throughout the galaxy. "There are other entities like the Void out there," Tahoe explained during the announcement ceremony. "Intelligences we have failed to recognize because they don't think as we do. Humanity's unique cognitive patterns make you invaluable for such contact situations." Sun Wu found herself appointed as Earth's first official representative, tasked with returning home to prepare humanity for the revelation that they were not alone in the universe. A diplomatic vessel was prepared for her journey, along with a small delegation of Confederation representatives. The night before departure, Sunwoo stood on the observation deck one last time, saying goodbye to the fragment of the void. Through their unique communication system, it expressed what could only be described as gratitude, a complex mathematical pattern that conveyed appreciation for ending its isolation. As she turned to leave, she found Taeho waiting by the door. The Supreme Coordinator had been a skeptic of her methods at first, but now looked at her with what she had learned to recognize as profound respect. "We have existed for millennia," he said quietly, "mastered technology beyond your imagination, yet failed where you succeeded. Why?" Sunwoo considered the question carefully. "Because your perfection became your limitation," she finally answered. "The Confederation evolved toward perfect logic, toward seeing the universe as a system of absolute rules. You see the universe as it should be, logical, orderly. Humans see it as it could be, chaotic, unexpected, and full of possibilities. Sometimes, the greatest wisdom is knowing when the rules don't apply." Taho's 3 eyes blinked in sequence, the closest his species came to a nod. "You have given us more than a solution to the void. You have given us a new way of thinking." The journey back to Earth took 16 hours in the advanced Confederation vessel. As they approached the blue planet, Sunwoo watched through the viewscreen with mixed emotions. How would humanity react to the news she brought? Would they respond with fear, wonder, or both? "Are you concerned about your reception?" asked Minho, who had volunteered to join the diplomatic mission. "A little," Sunwoo admitted. "We're going to tell people that not only are we not alone in the universe, but that our greatest value to the galaxy is our messy, emotional, illogical thinking. That's going to be an adjustment." As their ship entered Earth's atmosphere, carefully cloaked from detection until the proper moment, Sunwoo smiled at the thought of explaining to humanity that their greatest asset to the galaxy wasn't technology or resources, but their beautifully imperfect, wonderfully unpredictable minds. In their darkest hour, the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy had turned to humans, not for weapons or resources, but for the unique way they saw the universe. And that, she thought, was humanity's greatest gift to the stars.